Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of PixlFeed Radio, and I'm here with my friend Warren Coughlin. Warren, how you doing today?
Fantastic. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, man. For those of you that don't know, Warren is one of us, a serial entrepreneur, and now he's been coaching entrepreneurs to success, freedom, and aligning their goals to achieve those, aligning their, what do you call it? Oh my God, I lost the
their values.
Their values to achieve the goals that they have set for themselves, because I know we all suffer from shiny object syndrome and we go all over the place. So I'm really excited to have you here today. I love talking to entrepreneurs because, we're very much alike. I find out in the sense that we just can't sit still, right?
Yeah, entrepreneurs are. I say to clients all the time, we're all freaks in nature. We're not like regular human beings.
I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, sometimes I just wish I was normal, where I just like, okay, I'm gonna go to my 9 to 5, and then I'm gonna come home and do nothing.
You'd be miserable. Miserable.
I would be miserable. Listen, I've done it before, way back in the day, and it's not fun for me. So here I am.
I used to be a lawyer, man. That's as far from being the entrepreneur as you get. And it's a different game, that's for sure.
My wife's an attorney, so I know what you guys have to deal with on a daily basis. Yeah, she's pretty busy all the time. I don't know how she does it. Like, I had this idea of lawyers in my head before I met her, and then I met her. I'm like, all you do is read and write papers all day. That's like going to school all day, every day. Like the part that I hated about school, I could never do that.
What's interesting about lawyers, I got to say, like, of all the places I've been, I've got this sort of values focus to entrepreneurship. When I was in law, I found it is the environment in which people actively talk about ethics all the time. Like, they really, really care. I mean, the reputation of the slimy lawyer is more stereotype than real. Like, most entrepreneurs really care about doing things the right way.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. So let's get into it. Let's talk about your background first. Like, I want to bring everybody on. So childhood, obviously you were an attorney at some point.
Not in childhood.
Not in childhood, but when you started, because entrepreneur, we all have it in us since the time we're kids. Maybe some are late bloomers, I guess. I was I kind of dipped all over the place, but I really got serious later. So how was it with you? Like, when you were a kid, just school? Were you doing things on the side? How did it all start?
No, I did stuff on the side. So for me, it's a weird story in a way. Like, starts at birth. I was supposed to die when I was born. I was given zero chances.
Really?
Yeah, I was the second person in history to live through this weird congenital defect.
That's crazy.
And so when I found out about that kind of spurred in me a desire to do something, right, with this unexpected gift or undeserved gift.
Right.
And so I looked for a lot of different things. And so, when I was in high school, I was involved politically. I had a thing about entrepreneurship. Like, I was part of junior achievement when I was in high school. So I always had this thing to try to do it. And then I went through this long circuitous route to try to find where I wanted to play. So I went into law thinking maybe I'd go into politics, and then realized I hung out with some people who were pretty senior in the political game here in Canada, and I just didn't really like it that much. So thought I'd stay in law, but then I found I like making a pie more than fighting over a pie. So I became an actor and a theater director, became a college professor, trying to inspire young minds and all that kind of thing. And then I actually took the leap. I left law to start my own businesses, and that's where it really started to sing, right? Like, entrepreneurship, I believe in my soul, is one of the most powerful forces for positive social change. Entrepreneurs they create value, they create opportunities, they create jobs, they create solutions to problems. And, there's a, I don't know if you know the play Rent. There's a line in that play that I love. And
I haven't watched it, but I know. What's the line?
It says, the opposite of war is not peace, it is creation.
Oh, I like that.
So, yeah, it's great, right? And so that's what entrepreneurs do. They create all the time. And so that creative act is the antithesis of sort of a destructive act. And so that's why I think entrepreneurship is so important for advancing pretty much any social aim we have.
Yeah. No, that's a good point that you bring up. Yesterday, I just launched a new brand online a few months ago, and it's actually I'm documenting the whole thing here in the YouTube channel. There's a playlist for it, and we've been having a difficult time scaling. Like, I'll make the long story short because this is not what the podcast is about. But like, when I started my first few brands online, I got spoiled with Facebook ads because it worked like it was supposed to, and I can just scale to hundreds and thousands of dollars in sales in weeks.
Nice.
Now with the whole Apple thing and privacy, it has wrecked the whole ecosystem, and it's very, very difficult to get traction now. So we've been having a hard time scaling this new brand, my partner and I. And we got an email yesterday from one of our customers. And it was such a nice email. It's like, thank you so much. I love, whatever it is. I'm not going to say what it is. So much. It made my day. Glad, we include handwritten notes with every order. Thank you. And all this other stuff,
Nice.
for the unboxing. And yeah, she wrote this like whole paragraph, and it literally like gave us goosebumps. And I was like, oh my God, this is what makes it worth it. Because, we go through all the headaches of like, and yeah, obviously money, of course, but it's like you go through all the headaches, you deal with all the issues. Every day there's putting out a fire or trying to figure out where to pivot and all this stuff. And then you get that one email out of nowhere that you're not expecting. And it just totally makes your day. And like, this is why we do it, right?
That's
and
right.
That's what keeps us going, right?
Yeah.
Touch people's lives. It's not only about money. That's what I tell people all the time. At first it is, but there's a certain threshold that you pass that it's not about that anymore.
Oh, no. So I'm a business coach now. Like I sold my interest in my last business, then became a business coach back in 2002. So I've been doing that for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
I had a client who's now become a really, really close friend. And like when he started, he was in debt to the government. He, for tax arrears. He didn't like what he was doing. He didn't have a vision. Wound up selling the business for 8 figures. He had a really great culture. He had a fantastic sales methodology. He's now got a charitable foundation that helps at-risk youth get educated so they can move on to university. And he's just digging life. And
that's awesome.
That whether he made money, not it was just his life is so much better. And it you kind of look at that and go, I had a hand in that. That's pretty cool. I had another client just 2 months ago say to me, and it was, two quick stories. Like at the beginning of COVID, when it hit, I had 3 clients who were actively considering closing their businesses, and I talked them out of it. And 2 of them have had their best years ever.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my clients had, same thing.
Yeah, so it's like they could have shut down.
Yeah.
And so you start to see that, you can have those impacts, and it's really cool. One of my clients, she actually one day turned to me, she goes, "You're the moral compass for our business."
That's awesome.
Like, wow.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah, no, totally. So you're right. Like, getting a paycheck and everything is great, but when you're sort of having an impact, it's what makes it really gratifying.
Absolutely. So, okay. So you were thinking about getting into the political game, and so you were in school. How do we go into I guess political and law kind of go hand in hand type of deal, maybe a little bit.
In Canada, lots of people in politics started with law.
Yeah. So you started working for a firm, or did you open your first firm, and then where did you go from
I
there?
worked with one of the oldest firms in Ontario, and would practice for 6.5 years, and really fantastic people, really, really honorable, ethical, smart, interesting human beings. But just, round peg, square hole as I was working. It just wasn't where I belonged. So I left to start my first entrepreneurial venture. And probably like a lot of your listeners, my first one, it was to start a semi-professional sports team, and some guys I was partnering with did an end run.
That's a big one to right off the bat. It's like, I haven't done anything, but you know what? I'm going to start a sports team. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome.
Oh, I had a buddy who worked with the league, and he gave me some information about what they were looking for. So I partnered up with a couple of people. And then they kind of did an end run, and I got sort of shunted off to the side, and I went, okay, so that one didn't work. And it taught me something. Like each one of those, I hope everyone who goes into business and has a failure learns something from it, right?
Every time. I felt so many times it's ridiculous. Yeah. And at the time it sucks, and you're down and you're pissed. At least I'm pissed. But when you look back, like maybe 6 months later or a year later, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. Or I learned that lesson on that, Yeah. It's funny because you don't think proactively about it when it happens, but then you're doing something else, and then you remember it's like, oh, this is what I did back then. Not do that, go this way.
Okay, there were flags there. Like
there were flags all over the place. You just didn't have the experience.
Yeah, for me it was I got there was a flag really early on in this partnership that there was a values misalignment, that this person was way more selfish than, I was comfortable with, but he had a relationship that I needed to get things off the ground. So I rationalized it, and it came back and bit me on the backside. And so I was like, okay, don't get into business where you don't have the values.
Rule number one. There you go.
Yeah. So from there, I was like, oh crap, what am I going to do? Like, I left law to start this thing. So now I had no income. I had no job. I had no business. And it was like, oh crap. So doing sort of the entrepreneurial problem solving thing, I came from law. I just on a whim, I wrote to this college and said, hey, I'm a lawyer. I'm also a business guy. I'll put together a course on marketing law for your business students. They said yes. They actually had an opening. So that job sustained me while I built the next business.
Now, let me ask you something, because a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but I know a lot of the people that I know, like, I'm a college dropout, but I started my first quote unquote real business at 23, and then it failed when the economy crashed. Well, it didn't fail. Like, it lasted a good, 8-9 years. And then I made some bad decisions and I shut it down when the economy crashed. But I didn't have a degree to rely on, with a professional career where I can go, okay, I can get a job for now. And I mean, like a quote unquote, a good job, like an attorney, or, I had to go to sales right away to try to make some money as quick as I could. So did you ever, in the back of your mind, you're like, well, worst comes to worst, I have my law degree and already have some experience, I can always get another job? Or was that not an option?
That wasn't an option. Like, when I left law, when the elevator doors closed behind me,
that was it.
Yeah,
interesting. That's cool.
Not because there was the people who I worked with were just they were wonderful human beings.
It just wasn't for you.
Yeah, it just wasn't my thing. So no, when the door hit my backside on the way out, it was like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah. So okay, so the you got the job at the university. So you put the course together.
So I started teaching that, and then started putting the next thing together. And again, second failure. Partnered with a guy, created this really cool kind of promotional thing. Like, at the time, it was we actually got research money to build this thing. It was kind of a technologically advanced. It was called an enhanced CD at the time, which now is like antiquated, but at the time was pretty advanced. And got a meeting with the largest brewery in Canada to do an impact promotion. And this was, again, one of those really interesting lessons, right? I sat with the vice president of marketing for the largest brewery in the country. And he said, quote, "This is exactly what we are looking for."
And you're like, yes, you see dollar signs.
Yeah, like, this was a multi-million-dollar deal.
Right.
And, I was like, I can't do any better than give somebody exactly what they're looking for.
Right.
And then it got into what he does. He let the brand managers make decisions about their own promotional programs, and they had a whole sequence of them, and they didn't pick it up.
The red tape all in between.
Second lesson, right? Selling into organizations, you got to realize the pain chain and the complex multi-party sale within a large organization. I was young and naive. I was 30. And I was like, hey, I got a meeting with the vice president of marketing, and he said he loves it. We're good.
Yeah. And you're counting your chickens before they hatch. And it's like, that's why I learned a long time ago, and my dad always taught me this: do not celebrate until that money's in your bank account. I don't care how many papers you sign. I don't care if the check is in your hand. Until that money's in that account, it's not a closed deal yet. And that one always stuck with me.
But here's the thing, from both of those lessons, what was interesting, I think, from a mindset standpoint, rather than get down from those two failures, what those two failures actually taught me was that my instincts were right. Like, the sports team actually worked. Like, it became, I wasn't part of it. It became the top merchandising team in that league. So like my instinct about location, about branding, about all that stuff was right. My values decision was wrong, right? In terms of partnership, but I was right. The promotional piece, like, senior guy said it was exactly what he was looking for. So my instinct was right.
Yeah.
And so even though they failed, I was encouraged, which is, I know, kind of weird, but
right.
But that's kind of,
so you have the gift of like, oh, that's a great idea, this will work, or or like seeing something and how to come up with the solution for it. See, I'm the other way around. Like, I have a horrible eye for like new products, or like finding the solution to the pain out of nowhere, like some people do. but I can execute the hell out of it. Like you tell
Oh,
me
nice.
what it is and I will make it happen, you know, and scale it to the moon and back.
That's
But I'm
probably
jealous
more
of
valuable.
people because I can do that. And I'm like, oh my God, if I just had the eye for products like that, like some people that I know, I'll be like, you know, knocking out of the park left and right daily.
Yeah.
You know? So that's really good. So, okay. So what happens after that?
So then the guy I was partnered with on that one, we went, okay, so that's kind of cool. We got some good ideas there. So we started doing some consulting around that. So I started doing business plan development for other people with ideas. And then we started doing some other promotional stuff. And then my partner was friends with a couple other guys in the industry. And we sort of all sat together and went, the four of us have this really crazy complementary mix of skill sets that if we get together could be really killer. And so we did, and we actually built one of the top sort of new media consultancies in Canada for a while. We created something called the Canadian New Media Awards. We acted for some of the, you know, the largest bank in the country, the largest publisher in the country. And we started putting together really interesting, you know, online promotional and marketing programs and strategies for large brands. And we were very strategic about it because we knew that a lot of this was in the boom era.
Right.
And a lot of that stuff was vaporware. Like there was a lot of really bad business models out there that were just trying to do stock plays. Yeah. And so we were very consciously, we only worked for big brands, like established brick and mortar brands. And so we did very, very well for a number of years.
I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening to this, how do you even get in front of those huge brands? Because the ones that I've dealt with, they came to me through like a referral or something. And still, it's not some of the brands that I would love to get my hands on, you know, like something like Nike or something like that. I'm just wondering, like when you talk about huge brands, I've tried. So there's so much red tape in between. And it's about who do you know and how do you get to them and all that. I'm just curious though, when you guys started and put this whole together, did you guys have the connections already? How did you guys get your first few clients?
So it was a bit of an atypical approach, but it was a smart approach. So one of my partners was very connected politically. And so at that time, the industry was relatively new and people were trying to figure it out, right?
Right.
And so we actually did some research studies that were funded. We created the Canadian New Media Awards. I actually facilitated the creation of the first National New Media Association. And so we were sort of seen as leaders in the industry.
Nice.
And so then people in the big brands were trying to figure out this whole new media industry. Like, how do we actually take advantage of it? There was a lot of uncertainty. Like, does the advertising work? Like one of our clients, they wanted to do a banner ad strategy at the time. We said, no, we looked at your strategy and it's the wrong thing to do.
Right.
You know, you need to stay with direct mail. Actually, it was a better solution for them. And so when we started getting seen as giving really practical advice rather than just taking orders, the reputation started to kind of grow. Like one of the large publishers, they came with us with a website initiative, and we went back to them and said, no, that's the wrong strategy. For the budget you have, you need to do a microsite strategy among a number of your authors. And they never thought of it, right? And so because we were kind of new in the industry, but we're pretty tapped in both technologically and some of the trends that were going on, it just positioned us as leaders fairly fast.
That's really cool.
And a couple of my partners were exceptionally gifted at one of them was a leader on the production development side. Like anybody involved in development knew him. And then the other guy was really connected politically. And so that combination of being able to get to decision makers, but also getting to the developers.
Politics, man. That's the game right there. You can get to a lot of people through politics and the big bucks.
Oh yeah. And and then when I facilitated the New Media Association, like that was a credibility establishing piece, right? Like
social proof.
Yeah. And then when we did that, like people who wanted to be recognized because we own the award show, the only one in the country, it was like, okay, these are the guys who are kind of the judges who are good. You know,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a really good strategy.
And it's that reminds me of when I watch TV. When I found out the whole JD Powers awards for cars, it's all owned by Chevy or Ford, one of the two. It's like JD Power, we won the JD Power award. I'm like, it's owned by you, dude. Of course you're gonna win. Like it's like a meaningless award, but it works. You see it everywhere,
Although on that, like because we're we were we were very careful about transparency. We actually assembled an independent judge panel that we were not part of to make sure that there was no
They didn't come back to you
allegations
guys.
of self-dealing or any of that kind
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah.
So how long did you guys do that for before you did the exit?
Must have been 6 years. And then the dot bust hit, right?
Yeah.
And again, from a learning, like I was literally managing cash flow on a daily basis. Like we lost $500,000 in pipeline business in a week and a half. Because the dot bust just like went like that. But the challenge was, right, they didn't say it was canceled because no one knew what was happening with the dot.
Right.
Because we were dealing with and we didn't see it coming because we were dealing with the big brands. We knew there was going to be a collapse in some of this vaporware business.
Yeah.
But we thought the big brands would stay. But it was like everybody panicked, right? And just put on everything. But they didn't say it was canceled. They just said it was postponed. So we didn't lay off everybody right away. So then we got into cash flow problems.
Oh my God.
Right. And so then I was managing cash flow on a daily basis, which was a fantastic education. It was painful as hell at the time.
Right.
But when COVID hit, guess what? I was doing workshops and seminars at the beginning of COVID. And I was saying, you got three things. You got cash flow management, you got supply chain management, and you got people management. Those are the only three things you need to focus on right now.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that helped me keep clients going during the early stages of the pandemic. And it was only because I'd had that painful experience before.
Yeah. So I mean, mine was pretty easy. Mine was everybody freaked out for like a day or two. And then I was like, all right, let's just chill for a second. Let's see what happens. And then all of a sudden sales went through the roof like it was Black Friday and Christmas because people had nothing better to do than shop online because they thought it was only going to be 2 weeks. And we're getting checks from the government. Let's spend all that money online. And man, it was like Christmas for like 6 months. It was crazy.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I did watch like a lot of like local businesses go under and stuff like that. Part sucks, but try to help some of them, and most of them listened, some of them didn't. And, the ones that didn't, they're not here anymore. So, but you can't force them. So you were helping with that strategy. So hold on. So cash flow bust. So what happens?
So how much longer? We survived. We went through it. We came out the other end of it. And then we were 4 partners and the business model had changed. So we were too top heavy. So a couple of us sold out, sold the business and looked for the next thing to do. And I was literally, what's the next thing I'm going to do? And a family friend was doing this crazy thing called business coaching that I had never even heard of before. Didn't even know it was a thing back in 2002.
Right.
And I looked into it and I went, ooh, this is really interesting. And everybody I knew, I checked with friends. I said, I'm thinking of doing this thing called business coaching. This is what it's all about. And they were all like, oh my God, that's perfect for you.
Yeah.
And so then I got trained and learned how to do it and kind of didn't look back. So I've been doing that for almost 20 years now.
That's awesome, man. So, which is great. You have all the experience, which is great. Obviously, you've been successful. So that's good. So when you're working with, first of all, who's your perfect client? Is it the starting entrepreneur, somebody who's established? Like what's
usually. So for me, it's usually between $500,000 and 10 million. I mean, I've worked with people up to 100 million.
Right.
But in terms of a sweet spot, it's that $500,000 to 10 million. Usually they've been around for minimum of 2 or 3 years. Startups, what I find in coaching with startups, there's exceptions to this rule.
Right.
But for the most part, startups, because they haven't been kicked in the teeth yet, they actually don't take advice well.
They think they know it all.
Yeah, they're sort of.
I did too. Yeah, when I was young.
Yeah, and the answer you get is sort of like, "Oh, we're all over that."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "You're really not all over that."
Right.
No, we are. No, you're not.
No.
And then a couple of years later, then they're like, "We really weren't all over that."
So, what's the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making from the get-go as soon as you start working with them?
That's a hard answer because there's so many, right? And I don't mean that, but every business is a bit unique. At a meta level, the things that people get wrong is they don't plan. They play whack-a-mole, so they don't do strategy, right? And because they don't do strategy, they don't have a direction and they try to do too many things at once. And that leaves them stressed out and kind of reactive rather than being able to take advantage of opportunities. I always say to people, like, if you can focus on 2 things a quarter, you'll have done 8 things a year. You show me 5 businesses that have made 8 fundamental changes over the course of a year. They're really hard to find. And the reason is because they're trying to do 23 things at once rather than 2 things at once. And they get a whole bunch of them to the 20-yard line, but nothing over the end into the end zone.
Yeah.
And so they never wind up making the changes. So that's like one of the biggest obstacles.
I used to make that mistake. And well, at first it was out of necessity. I couldn't afford to hire a bunch of people to do it for me. But then I was like, you know what? Even if I can, I just got to focus on one thing or two and then get them done. And once they're done, I'll move on to the next. Because something is better than nothing, than half-assing everything.
Right.
And once I started doing that, everything changed.
Yep.
And still to this day, I focus on literally like 2 things. That's it.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Everything else, it's have people do it for me or partners or whatever.
Yep. The second one, at a meta level, is just not educating themselves. I mean, business ultimately is an intellectual sport. Like it's a skill set, right? And it's a skill set that has to be developed. And, a lot of people, because they have a great idea. Here's the thing about entrepreneurs, right? And there's actually been studies on this. People think entrepreneurs are risk takers. They're actually not. Entrepreneurs are optimists. And so they don't, because they're optimists, they don't actually see the level of risk that's inherent in their idea. Because they're so in love with their idea, they can't imagine it won't work.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
well, I personally used to be like that, but not anymore. Now I analyze everything. Yeah.
You learn.
But I'm still optimistic. Right? I still daydream and stuff. Like that never goes away. Yeah. Yeah. I still have the vision of like 10 years from now, it's going to be like this. That never goes away for me, at least.
Oh, you have to. I'm the same. I mean, I'm right now building an online platform for other coaches to use based on my model.
Right.
Like it's the next thing.
Cool.
So, but when people when they're just in love with their idea and they don't understand the discipline, then it leaves them not being able to put the right stuff in place. Right. So getting educated, and you can do that education by yourself, like go to school or read books, or you get someone like me to come in and like help you focus your training. Like, this is what you need to learn now. This is what you need to learn now. And when I say learn, it doesn't necessarily mean that you as the individual have to learn it, but the learning has to exist within the organization. So sometimes that may be acquire the knowledge, right, through another person. And then the third biggest mistake, I think, is kind of not having any system of accountability. Like, because you're an independent entrepreneur, and this kind of aligns with the strategy piece, because you're on your own and your own decision maker, you can do whatever the heck you want. Like, you got nobody there to tell you not to do that.
Right.
But because of that, you can drift off into what you love rather than what you need.
Right.
And so to have somebody, whether it's a friend or a coach or a trainer or a partner, whatever it is, have somebody to be able to go, that may not be the right thing right now.
I've had higher mentors in the past, and they, I joke around, they set my ass straight. I mean, my last one, it was, I shouldn't say last one because we're friends now, but John Lover. And I mean, he took me to a whole new level, man. He got me straight. Like, I was like all over the place. And he's like, no. This is what you have to do. And once I had that, it just took me to a whole new level, because discipline. It was just more discipline more than anything. It wasn't so much execution. It was just like trying to do too much at once, Yeah.
And then there's a lot of sub mistakes underneath that, like not running your financials, not understanding the numbers in your business, not building a culture where people can thrive, not having consistent sales efforts. Like then you get beneath those 3 meta ones, then there's all the tactical mistakes that happen.
Right.
But on that accountability piece, like one of my closest friend, actually, one of my closest friends is an entrepreneur. In our relationship, at one point, he said to me, okay, Warren, you've known me for a long time. What am I doing wrong? And it was one of those moments in a friendship, it's like, dude, do you really want to know? And he was like, yeah. And I said, okay, here's the deal. You have and he's a great guy. And I said, you have one of the most admirable commitments to work-life balance of any entrepreneur I know.
Yeah.
But I said, I make no judgment which way you want to go, but given what you're telling me your goals are, you are way skewed on the life balance right now. I said, this is what life needs to look like for the next 3 months. You need to go home and talk to your wife and get her permission and say, this is what life needs to look like for the next 3 months.
Right.
If you do that, you're going to turn this thing around. And he did, and he wound up doubling his revenue, grew his business, and within 6 months was back to a work-life balance, but a higher income level.
Yeah, you got to set boundaries too. I remember when the pandemic hit and my wife started working from home. That was rough because I'm not used to having anybody in the house, during the day. Even though we're in separate offices and floors or whatever. But at first, it was like she will just, and I'm guilty of the same thing. We will walk into each other's offices. Hey, what's up? What are you doing? Or like, I need this, I need that, and it's like we were interrupting each other like all day long. And at one point I was like, we have to stop. Like we're like wasting time during the day. And, it's like, I'm working. I know I'm home, but I'm working. I'm at work. Like, just like if you were at your office, wouldn't be bothering you. And then once we set those boundaries, we don't talk during the day at all.
Yeah. I've got a daughter, and so I actually have a lock on I work out of the house too, but I've got a lock on the door, and it's locked. You don't come in.
Yeah, it's like it's work. So that's that's one of the biggest mistakes. What you mentioned strategy. So when you're working with somebody and you're talking about, for those that don't know, because some of us, and I know I used to be like this, I used to be like, I'm just going to work hard and that's it. There was no strategy behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about strategy, what do you think the fundamentals are for people who are listening or watching, and they're getting started? What do you mean by strategy?
So here's my definition of strategy. It is the answer to the question, how do I deploy my scarce resources of time, team, and money to achieve a particular objective? So it's kind of that simple. So you start with, where do I want to be a year from now? And you have to have a really hard look at what's available to you. Like if you have very few people, then you have to deploy money or your own time, right? If you've got a lot of money but not a lot of time, then you use that. If you got a big team, so you got to start thinking, okay, what resources do I have available? And sometimes you have to temper your objectives a lot. There's kind of two theories on the goal setting thing. If you listen to some, it's like, just dream big and, the universe will come to your aid. I kind of call bullshit on that.
Yeah, money bags are just going to appear because you believe in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And the reality is, like, you got to, and for a couple of reasons too, sometimes you don't have the resources, but also if you set your goals too big, there's two kinds of people, right? Like some people get that actually truly inspires them and they take action. But there's a lot of other people that in the back of their head, something goes, that's not going to work. Like, I don't believe that. And as soon as you don't believe in your own goal, forget about it. Right. So you got to have a goal that you see as attainable and then build the actions that will help you get there. And
I think it's about the vision and the signs, if the signs are there. Like right now, like I mentioned earlier, I have a brand that I launched and we're kind of struggling with everything that's going on with iOS 14 and all that stuff with Apple.
Yeah.
So it's taking a lot more money to get it off the ground, and stuff that we used to test in a week or two, it's taking months to see if it works, if it doesn't. And I have put so much money into this thing that it's ridiculous. Like, I'm ashamed to say how much, because I would have never done it in the past, but it's like, I see the pieces coming together, and I've done this enough times that I know it's going to work. And going back to your point of strategy, it's going back to like, there's things that I want to do myself in order to try to save money. And I'm just like, I can't, like, I don't have the time to do this. As much as I want to learn about it and do it myself because I have the knowledge, I just can't. There's only so much time during the day. So I had to hire, I'm an agency, and I had to hire my buddy's agency to handle all the influencer social media content, not the ads, but the content, just because I don't have the time to come up with the strategy to give to the people who can execute it and to keep up with it. So that's when it comes, like, I have the money, so I have to put down the money to get it done. But guess what? If I didn't have the money, I'll be working like 18-hour days, but I don't have to work 18 hours.
Sometimes that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
So in terms of like the structure of strategy, for the first thing is to do, and this sounds very MBA-ish, but it actually works, is to do some form of SWOT analysis, which means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And one of the things I did, because I've been doing this since 2000.
Hold on, repeat that one again. I never heard that one. Say that again.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths and weaknesses are internal. Like, what are you really good at? What resources do you have? What skills do you have? What talent? All that. Weaknesses are, where do you suck, basically? What do you,
Yeah.
what are you not so great at? Opportunities are external, like what out in the world looks like something you could take advantage of. And then threats are just that, what, like, Delta variant
Right.
surging again is a threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what decisions are you going to make in the face of that? Now, one of the things I did, because I've done this so long, I've coached people from startup to 100 million in revenue, and I've seen maybe 3 businesses who do this kind of strategy well.
Yeah.
Most people just don't. So I've actually built a tool that automates the whole front end of the strategic planning process. It basically asks you 300 questions about every part of the business and then automatically populates a SWOT.
300 questions, man. If I see 300 questions, I'll be like, "Oh no."
Well, it's not. Because of that, I do it in little sections.
That's smart. Because I'm telling you, if I sat down, and you tell me you're going to answer 300 questions, I'll be like, "Close the window."
Yeah. So the way I do it is like 10 questions on a tab.
Yeah,
And
that's cool though.
I tell people to do it over a week, like no more than an hour at a time, so
Yeah.
you don't get decision fatigue.
Yeah.
But what it does, it gives you a deep, because one of the problems, right? When you asked earlier, one of the mistakes, it's actually people confuse symptoms with problems, right?
Okay.
And so they focus on the symptom rather than diving into the problem.
Could you give me an example of what you mean by that?
So let's say I'm not selling enough, so it must be my salesperson sucks.
Yeah.
Maybe. What kind of sales training do you do? We don't do any. Do you have a unique selling proposition? No, we don't. Do you have a sales management process? No, we don't. What kind of recruitment do you do? Well, we recruit really fast. Do you use any personality profiling in your recruitment? No, we don't. Is it really the salespeople not performing?
Yeah, you didn't even know because you haven't put them through all of that first.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So you got to get to what's actually driving this problem.
Yeah.
Or we keep having this breakdown with our clients. I guess there's something wrong in our delivery. Well, maybe. Do you attract what's your marketing? Have you identified the right segment? If you have identified the right segment, is it your delivery process, or is it because you haven't hired the right people, or is it because you haven't trained? Like, you got to get to what's the problem behind the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what this tool is meant to do, is by going into this level of questioning, we get to what the real problems are.
Right.
And then from there, if you pick a focus, I call it a theme. But you got, like, here's your strategic focus. Here's 3 strategic priorities over the next quarter. And here's the action steps you're going to take. And then that plan that says, here's the focus, here's the priority, here's the action steps, becomes your boss.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of you playing whack-a-mole, it's like anything that ain't on the plan ain't getting done.
It's like the thing that I mentioned earlier, like the person that I mentioned earlier, John. It's like one thing he got me to do, it was live by my calendar and not by email.
Yeah.
He's like, if it's not on the calendar, you're not doing it. He's like, that calendar stays open in front of you all day long. It's like, you do not open your email until it says you can open your email.
That's right. That's right.
And that's like what set me straight. It really did. Because before it's like, oh, an email came in, I have to answer it right away. But I was in the, why? I don't have to answer it right away. I'm working on something.
And email is other people's priorities, not your own.
Yeah. That's why he taught me. Yeah.
And it's funny, one of those other mistakes, I that sort of ability to manage your priorities. I had these 2 clients that were partners, and I came in one day and they were like, "Oh my God, we're just so overwhelmed. We can't get everything done. It's just terrible." And I went, "Okay, let's break this down." So I had them list everything they had to do over the next week. In the next week. And I said, "How long do you think this will take?" Wrote down the times they had, added 20% to every one of their time estimates. I then planned out their week for them. Everything was done Wednesday at 3:30.
That's awesome. I'm telling you, man, I know, because I do it too. We waste a lot of time on stupid things. I mean,
you should have seen them. Their jaws were like,
yeah, it's especially, in the office days when everybody's in an office, everybody stops by your office, so you're going to get water and you stop by so-and-so's office. Now you're chit-chatting about the weekend, and next thing you know, you just wasted 20 minutes. It's like,
one thing we haven't talked about, which is people, I've studied the other things first, but sales, of course, is often.
I grew up doing in sales. So you're talking to a sales guy from the get-go. I went digital like over a decade ago. I don't know, like 15 years ago. But before that, it was all sales, sales. So.
And sales solves a lot of problems.
Sales first.
Yeah.
Everything breaks, you deal with it later.
One of the challenges for growing businesses, though, that's really interesting, right? Unless you have a background in sales, most entrepreneurs don't have either sales training or sales management methodology.
Yeah.
Like, how do I hold my salespeople accountable? And sometimes they hire a salesperson, and because they have no sales training, they just trust their salespeople without having any sales management stuff.
Oh no, I mean, that's one thing about me. I mean, I educate myself, and I've never stopped reading. So I find out when I'm going to do something, like, who's the best at this thing that I want to learn or whatever. And then from back in the day, I mean, I've read every sales book you can think of, from, Zig Ziglar to like Tom Hopkins, like, so I've developed my own scripts and everything. So if you tell me you're in sales and I talk to you for 10 minutes, I'll be able to tell if you're good or not just by the interaction that we have. And it's like, you're not going to bullshit somebody who did sales for so long. But that's one thing. It's like, I deal with, have multiple business, multiple type of partners. And some of them are young kids, they're in their 20s and they're so smart. I mean, it's beyond smart, but they don't know a thing about sales, but they know all the technical side of things. And it's crazy to me. I'm like, how did you get here without knowing like how just basic sales? But it works. But I tell people all the time, man, if you should know sales, because you're selling yourself about something daily, whether it's a partnership, whether it's, I don't know, going to the store, dealing with the government. If you got to go deal with like a permit or something, you're always selling something. It works for everything.
Yeah. And then sales management becomes really important.
Yeah.
So actually on my website, on the front page, I actually put this on the front page of my website. It's a sales accountability planner. It's a simple tool that allows you to sort of identify salesperson, identify the different tactics that they're deploying. And then it sets, here's your activity target and your outcome goal, and then compare it to your actual. It's really simple. It's like one of the simplest tools I've created, but on a week by week basis, there's no hiding from the data. And so you find out really fast from the salespeople what's working, what's not working. So you can actually, and the reason I did, I've seen too many people, well, I got the salesperson working and they're working really hard, and they are, but they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know which tactics are productive and which tactics aren't. Because some, cold calling may work, may not. Maybe going to networking events works, may not. Maybe doing an educational seminar does not. And unless you can say, okay, I'm going to reach out for 5 podcast interviews this week, and did I get them? Yeah. And then did any leads come in off those podcast interviews? If you're not actually tracking both what you intend to do, what you and actually do, and then versus what you think the outcome is going to be relative to what the outcome actually is, you're always going to be guessing. But with this tool, it actually lets you know, you know what? That cold calling thing didn't work for us.
That's how I got into marketing. I was trying to look for ways to get inbound leads instead of cold calling, because I always hated cold calling. I don't know why, I just hate it. I was good at it, but I hated it because it's a different, rapport with the prospect. It's you're fighting basically against the grain, or however you say it in English. But when you're doing marketing and they come to you, it's a whole different interaction. It just makes everything a lot easier, and that's how I started getting into marketing from sales. Nice. And then combine both, and now with digital, man, I'm a double-edged sword. So,
well, if you can do both, that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's what I do now. So, and then I got into branding and building brands and all that stuff, and I love it. But I mean, sales has always been my foundation with everything that I do. So,
any entrepreneur that hasn't studied sales, you either have to learn sales yourself, or you have to learn sales management to ensure that you're able to produce results through other people's sales efforts. One of those, you got to have one or both of those things.
I've actually had accounts come to me with Facebook ads, when I open them up. That's why I specialize, and I look at them, and technically the technical side of it, the technical execution, perfect, 100%. There's some I've opened, I'm like, wow, I've never seen this. Oh my God, like this is on a whole different level. Like I'm learning from it. I'm consider one of the best people out there, and I'm like amazed by some of the stuff they've done technically. And then the account's not working. Then I open up the creatives and the copywriting, and I'm like, Oh, that's why. And all I do is like, guess what? I just grab all the hard work that you did, and I just changed the image, the video, rewrote the copy, launched it, and guess what? Now the sales are through the roof.
Nice.
Because they know that I call it the nerdy technical, like the 0.1% of technicality on this audience, we need to like improve by this much. And I'm like, no, dude, change the ad copy. That's it. That's all you got to do. And then it changes everything. We're human. Yeah. I mean, at the end, it's 50% of the battle. It's traffic. The action has to be done by a human being. You still got to set off those lizard emotions in their brain. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. I don't care how technical it is,
Yeah.
But so that's one of it. So what about company culture? Do you, after you set up the strategy and all that stuff, how do you get them to come up with I'm actually having a hard time with that one. How are you come up with like a company culture to figure out their company culture, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's this old saying that says culture eats strategy.
Yeah.
And I actually don't agree with that. I believe culture and strategy are a great marriage, right? Because strategy tells you what to do and culture makes sure that it gets done.
Right.
So when I talk about culture, for the most part, I use the term high performance culture. Like I've had clients who've built, quote, nice cultures, and as soon as things get tough, people bail. But when you build a high performance culture, like people who are, I want to succeed and I want to contribute and I want to feel like I'm making a difference, those kind of cultures are fantastic. So in terms of how you go about doing that, there's a number of ways. You start with the purpose of the business, like why it exists, sort of purpose and vision of the business.
Yeah.
And then you build the values. And sometimes I hesitate. My hesitation when I was saying it is just because I know that sometimes when people hear this language, it sounds very kumbaya, right? Or granola. And it's like, oh, we're into this soft crap now. But it really isn't, right? Like when you do values the right way, and when I help clients get to their values, there's actually a facilitated process that gets to it. It's not just, oh, what values do you like? It's like, what are the values that are necessary for you to achieve that purpose and outcome? Because it's not necessarily the same as your personal values at life. They can't be inconsistent, but there's certain values. Like if you're an engineering firm and you don't have a value of excellence, that's going to be a problem. Right?
Yeah, especially in engineering.
Yeah. So there's certain things that have to be there. And then when you distill it down to behaviors, like this is what, like excellence in an engineering firm is going to be different than excellence in an event management company. Like the way people show up for those two values is going to be very, very different. So you've got to describe them behaviorally and then make sure people are living it. And the way you make sure people are living it is not immediately by turning it into some performance management punitive thing. Like if you make values something that people get punished for, then they're not going to live them, right? But when you make it aspirational, like these are values that produce great outcomes. So you have to be talking about it all the time. That good thing that happened because we live these values.
Right.
That negative thing that happened because we didn't live this value. And when you keep having those conversations and reinforcing it, it starts to sink in at a DNA level. One of the problems where people get it wrong with the culture stuff is they say, here's our work, and then we're going to have a culture conversation over here, right? Or on Fridays, we're going to talk about our values. And then so there's this disconnect, right? Where values are this thing on the side that maybe HR looks after or that executive assistant talks about, but it's not baked into what we do every day.
Yeah.
But when you make it so that every decision has a values decision associated with it, then it starts. And I'll just give you one quick story. This was a business. They were 45 million when I started working with them, and I can't swear on a podcast.
Yeah, you can. It's fine.
You can?
Yeah.
All right. The client, I just say he's this fantastic guy. I love him to death. He's this big brash guy.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's two of them, there's partners. And the one of them, when I first introduced the idea of values and culture, he goes, "This is fucking bullshit." This is what he says. And we're all right. So, his partner works on him.
Was from the East Coast? Was he from the East Coast here in the US or somewhere else?
No. He's right here.
Okay.
but just he's just a fantastic guy.
Sounds like me. I would love to meet this guy.
Oh yeah, you love him. He's brilliant. And so we work on him for a while, and about 6-8 months later, he goes, "All right, we'll give it a try."
Yeah.
Now their business has grown from 40 to 80.
That's awesome.
They've been best place to work in their industry for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years running now. And he will, in a public presentation, go, "Culture, it's everything."
That's amazing.
Like,
That's
it absolutely
so cool.
transformed their business. Right?
That is so cool.
But that business, why I'm telling this, so I went in there one day, and they got a senior VP, and the senior VP said, "Warren, we got to work on some systems." And this is a business that has really sophisticated systems. And I was like, what possibly more could you need? And they told me this story, you know, somebody put something into production without a deadline, and the account manager went overseas, and blah, 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 blah. And so they said, we got to have a system to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I went, "Well, hold the phone." And I pulled out 3 of their values. And I went, "Were any one of these followed?" And the room suddenly got awful quiet, you know, and she said, "No." And I said, "If these values had been followed, how long would it have taken to solve this problem?" "About 12 minutes.
That's
Right.
awesome.
So I said, "Do you need more systems, or do you just have to follow your freaking values?"
Yeah.
And what was interesting was that was the moment in that company where they went, "Oh, this stuff drives profit."
Yeah.
Right? Like, this isn't kumbaya. This isn't just nice, fluffy stuff that HR does. This is stuff that produces profitability because it creates predictable, replicable behaviors that you can rely on.
I never thought about it that way. I'm 100% honest with you. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
As a profit making type of deal.
Oh, it's culture, I think, is it is a huge strategic competitive advantage in driving profitability. Because when you have a high performance culture, what happens is you have people, you attract talented people who care about what they're doing. Because they care about what they're doing, they hold each other accountable. Like, you don't get to be on my team and not pull your weight.
Yeah.
Right. If you're in a high performance culture. So that means you've got higher productivity, you get less wastage, you have less redos, you tend to have higher customer satisfaction. So all of that turns into higher profit margins, higher repeat business, and ultimately higher bottom line.
I mean, I can see that because, you know, before I had my own stuff, I did sales and I was always between the top 3. And when I wasn't number 1, it was like, I hated you. And we were best friends, you know, but I hated you because I'm a competitive person, you know, and it comes out and it's just like, it used to drive me nuts, you know, but that's what made us bring the numbers up because we're trying to compete with each other. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's definitely. All right. We're almost out of time. I'm like, man, I love podcasts like this because it feels like 10 minutes, but it's not. So really quickly before we go, I guess this is a 2-part question because I just thought about it. What is the common trait that you see in extremely successful companies and the people who run them? So I guess it's a 2-part question.
So it's a similar answer for extremely successful individuals. It's a commitment to decision and action. Like, you can talk about different skills and stuff all day long, but the people I've seen that crush it all the time, even if their decision is wrong, right? Even if the decision doesn't work out, it's decision, action. That action didn't work. Great. New decision, new action. Right.
Yeah.
And so that tends to be what drives those individuals. From an organizational standpoint, I'll say again, it's having a high performance culture. A company where you have a group of people who are aligned and care about an outcome, care about each other, and care about serving clients, they will outperform anybody.
Yeah, I love it. Warren, thank you so much, man. I really enjoy this podcast. It went way too fast. Where can people find you?
They go to warrencoghlin.com. So it's COUGHLIN. And like I say, on the homepage there's a sales accountability planner tool. And I've also got there's a link on there for cool tools, I call it. And I've got a bunch of free resources that people can access that I built, as well as a couple of courses. A couple of like cheap courses for $37 or something like that just get them some sales training or culture training or presentation training and things like that. But yeah, it's warrencoghlin.com, and I'd be happy to help any entrepreneur who wants to get to that next stage.
Sounds good, man. All links in the description as always. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe. And if you're on the podcast, give me a review, man. Help out with the algo. And now, Warren, thank you so much, man. Till next time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.